But I quickly realized that it was a total shit show. I never want to be in a scenario again where I need to literally fly my team out of the country so that I can keep their roles safe. 7 out of 10 people are thinking about quitting their roles at any given time. 9 out of 10 people are not engaged by their organization. I mean,
basically
in their roles.
Most people I speak to aren't interested or engaged with the job.
Yeah, that's the reality that we're in. Leadership should really be creating a safe environment. As a leader, you're there as a let's get the job done, but there's a fair bit of being a life mentor as well in there. I'd say my biggest fuck ups have been...
Welcome to the What the Fuck Happened podcast. I'm Tom.
And I'm Sam, and we're co-hosts of this podcast.
We talk to leaders in the marketing world and lift the lid on what success truly is.
And it's all about that moment of chaos that breeds success.
With every episode, we'll be speaking to new guests, diving into the what the fuck happened moments that shaped them.
And we're interested in the fine, gritty details. No story is a straight line, no journey is a straight line, and the squiggle is something we're going to ask every guest to draw out at the end.
I'm VP of marketing for Zensai, and if you're not aware of what Zensai is, it's a learning and development HR tech platform that really focuses on human success.
Awesome. Well, look, very pleased that you've found the time to come in this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to diving into a bit more of your story. What the fuck happened there? Hi there, Donal. Nice to see you.
Hi there, Tom.
Thank you for coming in. Every success story, we think, starts with a bit of chaos. So what is your biggest or your main what the fuck happened moment?
I think having been in tech for, 20 years, I think I've had lots of big what the fuck moments. The one that probably stands out the most was actually in a non-tech organization. I had a brief spell for around 9 months, and it was brief for a reason. I worked for probably a very renowned international real estate company that had lots of offices all around Europe, very focused on community. There was actually quite an interesting podcast about that organization as well, and its moments where it didn't succeed and crashed. And when I joined that organization, I joined under this promise that I was going to be building this team of 30. We were launching loads of new real estate all across Europe, super high-performing performance marketing team, brand marketing, product marketing, a real big opportunity to be part of something which was really disrupting an entire category, the category being real estate. When I joined that organization, I feel like I joined on a bit of a promise of these big things that were going to happen. But I quickly realized that it was a total shit show.
I think I know who it is, but I'm not. For the purposes of the podcast, they're going to remain nameless.
They're going to remain nameless for probably legal reasons. There were so many good things about that experience, but there was one big moment that really made me take a step back and think, what the fuck am I doing? Like, seriously, is this really where I want to be in my career? I've been working my ass off for over 10 years, building loads of teams, and I found myself in this position. And the position I found myself in was being advised by my manager, who was actually phenomenal and was not part of the problem, but being advised by my manager that I needed to fly my entire team out of London to a different city, so that when the founder of this company came to visit the London office, there was not going to be any possibility of anyone on my team being asked a question, because if they were asked a question and they didn't know the answer to it, there was a possibility that they might get fired. So having worked in really professional organizations before and up until this moment, I'd never been in this scenario before where I had to take my team out of a city because a leader was coming to town. It's a very unnatural thing to have to think about doing. But I did it, and we went to Barcelona. We had a great offsite. We needed to do quite a lot of planning anyway. But my WTF was like how bad a situation to be in where you need to take a team like completely out of a city, so you don't lose any of them because they might get fired from your leader. So I guess like that was a big WTF moment.
I think that is the biggest WTF moment on the WTF Happened podcast.
No, unfortunately, no one got fired.
Yeah, because they're all in Barcelona with you. Did the team know why you went there?
No, and I think it was kind of a crazy scenario. There was a lot of different things that had happened in the run up to it. When I joined the organization, the valuation was super high. We were on an approach to quite a significant PO. But then the wheels really came off when it was realized that the value of the organization was much less than was anticipated. So a lot of things went into lockdown. It was just a really wild scenario, and I think that the biggest thing that I take away from it is around corporate governance and having strong leaders that can lead an organization and really lead teams is so important, and that's something that I've carried with me in any other place that I've gone to. I never want to be in a scenario again where I need to literally fly my team out of the country so that I can keep their rules safe. People should feel safe, and leadership should really be creating a safe environment.
What I want to just bring a bit of context into this for other people listening is, I mean, the first thing I want to say is I think people are shaped by their experiences, and it's kind of interesting that you're now starting out at Zensai, which is this almost like platform, right? That's about driving human success in organizations.
Correct. You're
clearly passionate about, management, leadership, culture, and teams. You've had this "what the fuck happened" moment. I think we'll go into this story, or this sort of circle, if you like, throughout this conversation. But just before we do that, I just want to sort of set the scene a little bit, because you've actually held some pretty significant senior marketing roles across a number of big, very well-known B2B tech firms. We've got Amazon, Google, and Meta. So I'd love to just know a little bit, if you could maybe just share a little bit about those roles, and also what your sort of key drivers were behind the moves, when you've moved from each of those businesses, and then we'll come back to Zensai.
So I'd say like a really quick potted history tour of my career. I started working in London over 20 years ago. My first ever role was in the FT, actually. Okay. So it was before we got into tech, and my first ever role there was actually taking their recruitment section, which is part of their newspaper proposition, and turning it into a digital proposition.
Okay.
So it was like really back when their ft.com and the .com bubble was really just becoming a thing. And I can remember we put the newspaper PDF onto a website, and we were basically waiting to see whether anyone engaged with it or it got any kind of traction at all. And if I think of that to the progression through some of the tech companies that I've worked in, it's been a really interesting journey, but it hasn't all been tech. When I left the FT, I worked for another publication for a while, and I met a long-term mentor and one of my old bosses in an organization called The Scientist. She left that publication and went to Google. Called me up and said, "Donal, I think I found this. I'm working in this organization now. I know you're super interested in technology and online advertising. I think this could be a really good fit for you. Would you like me to refer you? And I was like, sure. What is it? And she said, oh, it's this company called Google. They do search. Have you heard of it? And back then it was just search. So that was all they did. They didn't do, didn't really have anything else apart from that old google.co.uk homepage. They didn't own YouTube or anything like that. So I guess that first role into tech was a previous manager bringing me across and introducing me to that organization. I was in Google in a number of different roles for about 8 years. Absolutely loved my time there. As an organization, I feel like they really created a culture and a strong sense of community. We felt like we were really rallying around a super strong product, and the leadership in Google was incredibly strong. I went through a myriad of different roles in Google before leaving. As my last role was head of B2B marketing for Europe. I couldn't progress any further in that role because the director above me was the director above me, and there weren't any other B2B marketing roles. So a lot of people at that point in time were moving around the tech space. So some peers had moved over to Meta, to Facebook, and one of my colleagues had contacted me to offer me or to refer me for a position for Instagram. So that was my move from Google to Instagram. I became head of B2B marketing for Instagram, did that for a few years, grew Instagram from a B2B perspective within international markets, just like I had done in Amazon, before taking some time out and moving over to WeWork.
And now you've just recently joined up with Zensai, right? Like 3-4 months ago, is it? Beginning of the year?
So there was the WeWork moment, then a couple of years at Amazon, and then more recently it was moving across to Zensai.
Okay. And what led to this decision? Because from the outside anyway, Zensai is a very different sort of opportunity, right, for you in terms, well, at least in terms of size of company.
Yeah.
Like it's not a conglomerate.
No. So I'd say over time, Google had a lot that I really want out of a role. So it had a huge amount of opportunity to grow. It had a product that I was super into. It had really strong leadership, like I've mentioned before. In a similar vein, I got more of that within Meta, but in Meta had an opportunity to set up a new team, to really lead where I'd kind of reached my limit of where I could get to in Google. Also, I'd been in Google for nearly 9 years, so it really felt I really wanted that change. When I left Meta, I jumped over to WeWork, with the idea of trying something new. But as I mentioned, the wheels really came off in WeWork, and consequently, I really craved stability. So I went from WeWork to Amazon, where I was in Amazon for a few years, leading international marketing teams as well. But from a culture perspective, from a community perspective, I didn't really get the same experiences as I'd had in other organizations. Mm-hmm. I'd realized through my experiences in WeWork that I liked the community and the builder opportunity of working in a smaller, more nimble organization.
You've recently joined Zensai. Mm-hmm. What led to this decision?
The thing that appealed most to me about Zensai was the idea that I could be part of a real change. I've worked in organizations that have had really amazing leadership, really amazing product, really amazing managers, and I wanted more of the same. I've worked in organizations that haven't had amazing leadership, haven't had amazing managers, and I didn't want to be there. This in Zensai, I'm working for an organization that's really trying to create a movement to help employees thrive. And that's something that I'm really passionate about and really want to get behind. It's got a phenomenal product that is supported by AI that can help organizations really understand the heartbeat of an organization, what's making people think, how they can learn, what does performance look like, and how they can create better engagement across the board. So for me and Zensai, it was really an opportunity to be part of an organization that I know is making really big changes in the world of learning development and HR tech.
Yeah.
I'm working with a manager before that I trust and respect.
Yeah.
I know that leadership is there. I know that culture is there.
Yeah.
And it's a product which I can totally get behind.
It, yeah. It's kind of like a full circle moment in a way. You know, we talked about the what the fuck moment and that being really highlighting to you that you feel passionate about good teams and good communication and culture and direction and so on. And now taking this role, it actually seems like a very obvious shift once you understand the context behind it.
It has never really felt obvious before, but when you've worked for great organizations and you've worked for organizations that aren't as strong, you can really start to see through the bullshit. You can identify super strong leaders. You can identify a really strong product. You can identify whether an organization has got the right culture. And for me, I had that in my early career, both in the FT and in Google. I had that in Meta. I had it less so in a few other organizations, but I still had it, and I knew how to take it into other organizations. I've always been passionate about creating an environment where I can get the most out of my team. I don't care whether it's in like helping them get to their next level in an organization that I'm in, or even if it's an organization somewhere else, it doesn't really matter. I mean, as a leader, you're there as let's get the job done, but there's a fair bit of being a life mentor as well in there. And I think I've been fortunate enough to have really great managers, and actually I followed one of these managers over into Zensai. It's such an important thing to think about. If you're earlier on in your career, some of the questions that I would really encourage people to think about is this the type of organization I want to work for? And maybe there are probably 3 questions that you might want to ask as well. Does it have a product that I'm really supportive of? Can I get behind this? Is this going to be interesting enough to do my job? Secondly is, what's the culture like? Has this organization got a culture where I think I can really thrive in and really be part of? And then the last part is it being led in the right way? Does it have the right leadership behind it? And I think if you really genuinely think about these things, you'll find an organization that will fit well for you. And I think in marketing, that's so important. There's such a diverse range of types of organizations and industries and things that you can do within marketing. Finding an organization that you're going to do well in is so important. And again, that's one thing that Zensai is trying to do. It's trying to level that playing field. It essentially provides technology that helps organizations be more successful, and they're more successful because they create happier people.
I've literally had the last couple of guests on this, been talking to them about, you know, their sort of like pivots, career defining moments, you know, being let go from jobs and so on. What's been interesting for me to hear from others is just how sort of frightening or scary or overwhelming those moments can feel, you know, changing job. I've changed, I mean, prior to Dojo, when I was working for other people, I think I must have had, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 jobs. I got fired twice, left twice, you know, but I think because I've had those experiences, the next one doesn't really seem as daunting as the previous one. But for a lot of people who are in a career, it can feel like a real big decision to make. And I think the points that you're making are really, really important because this is your life, and what you do in work also, like, it bleeds out into like your your personal life, your day to day, how you're feeling about a lot of things. And so you have moved roles. You have recognized, made those decisions. How do you approach big career shifts? Or more specifically, how do you approach moving roles?
I mean, it's a really good question. I'd go back to maybe back to those three big areas. Is this a product that I can get behind? Does this company have the right culture that's going to work for me? Is the company being run in the right way? Is the right leadership in place? And I think if you can find something that you really want, to your point, you've only got one life, right?
Yeah.
So there's no point spending it all day.
So you'd ask those three questions in your existing job as well, though, and reassess your current job. And if you can't answer all three of those with a positive answer, you then look for one that can tick all three boxes. Or
if you can finding a job. Finding a job sometimes as a marketer today can be difficult enough.
Yes, yeah.
Finding a job that you really love doing is an even bigger challenge.
Yes.
Finding a job that you love doing and finding a manager that you like and actually you get on well with and respect you is golden, and is much harder. Add in a product that you like as well. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if you're really into music and you end up working for Spotify, that might be your dream come true. The reality is, as a marketer, you're probably going to end up working for a fintech rather than Spotify.
Yeah.
So you need to try and find an organization that's going to treat you well, to invest in you, to help you get the most out of your career. Question a company's integrity. Question how a company looks after its employees, and figure out whether or not this is the right fit for you. You're going to be spending most of your life there.
Yeah,
really.
Would you rank those? Do you think? I mean, I'm thinking the three questions you've said are kind of place, people, product. People is like manager, like the person I'm learning from and being inspired by, and development. Place is the company, and then product is the thing that you're actually selling, or the vision, or whatever. So
yeah, I think if you can find people that share a similar purpose, you're finding your tribe, right? So your day to day is going to be so much better, particularly if you're earlier on in your career. I mean, a lot of that is about the people that you're with, the people that you're learning from.
Yeah,
I think that is super important. In terms of the product, realistically, a good marketer should be able to market anything, but you're going to just be naturally drawn to things that you like, right? So if you end up in a role where you're doing something that you have a vested interest in, you're naturally just going to do better there.
A slight pivot here, but we've talked a bit here about your sort of framework for making career decisions.
Yeah,
in a way. Do you have a framework for making business decisions, within your capacity of marketing role itself?
What kind of business decision? Like in general, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's a. I guess.
What kind of decision?
Do you have a process that's sort of how you want to run? I mean, look, maybe let's focus more on Zensai, right? You're going in there new with an opportunity to sort of put in place maybe some processes of how to approach things and how to do things. So do you have a sort of an approach, an ethos, a process that you now follow? So the process that I always follow, and actually this was introduced to me in Google, and I actually can't remember who said it. It was either Larry Page or Sergey Brin at a conference, and they said that one of the principles that they followed was to really understand the customer incredibly well, and then understand the product incredibly well and connect the two. So that's something which has always stood with me, whether it was in Google, Meta,
Amazon, who is obviously that organization is customer obsessed.
Yeah.
And that as a marketeer is always going to tide you over and do well for you. I am customer obsessed. So regardless of any organization that I've worked in, I really want to understand what drives, what motivates that customer. If you don't end up understanding the customer really, really well, you're not going to market to them in the best possible way. Understand their pain points, understand their motivations, understand their behaviors, and respond to those. If you understand the product really well, you're going to understand what's going to resonate with those customers in the best possible way. And the marketing that you do is the connective tissue between those two. It's how you tell stories, how you take that out. And I think today we are in a different world in terms of storytelling. We have so much data that will tell us so much about customers, so much about their usage of product. It can be super overwhelming, but it is information that we have never really had before as marketers. If I think back to my earlier years as a marketeer, we would have thought that the type of information and the data that we have today would have been gold dust.
Yeah.
But now it can actually almost feel a little overwhelming. There's so much data. It can sometimes get in the way of good storytelling. So I think today, from a B2B marketing perspective, it's kind of golden age of using data for the purposes of storytelling. But there's just so much of it out there. It can actually be slightly overwhelming as well, almost to the point where there's so much data that you can use, but there's also so much content that is out there. So you're competing against both of these areas. That was
going to be my next question. Is like, what is your perspective on the state of marketing today?
There's so many interesting things that are happening in the world of marketing at the moment. Data is just one of them. We're sitting on a mountain of data. If you can figure out how to use that, you're really cracking a lot of codes. Using data to storytell is super important. But also, as a marketer, you have all of this data. As a consumer, you have all of this content that's out there, and you have more content now than has ever existed before. So as a marketeer, you have to also try and figure out how can I resonate, how can I cut through. It's incredibly challenging. Things like AI might help you with that. But for me, it always comes back to you have to create something which is valuable. If you're in consumer marketing, it's going to need to resonate from a cultural perspective. If you're in B2B marketing, there probably needs to be some sort of commercial value there. So you've got to think about the stories that you want to tell. Back to what I said before, understand your customer in a really deep way, understand your product in a really deep way, and use data to tell those stories that can connect both.
It is a really interesting time we're in at the moment, and I sit on the sort of content production side of the fence, and everybody can produce content.
Yeah.
And those that can't produce content can use AI to produce content.
Well, yeah, but is the content that they produce good though?
No,
or no, it's like it's garbage, isn't it?
But it's
Or you can
still
tell
content.
that it's not good.
So I think when you're looking at the channels, the competition for time, for attention is intense.
Is minimal. Yeah.
Like, it's so intense. Like, whether the content on there is good or not, there's so much of it. You got to earn the right for that person to spend X number of seconds looking at your content.
There needs to, and that's what I mean. There needs to be a value exchange. So there needs to be a really strong, like, what am I getting out of this? So, I mean, bad B2B marketing is just atrocious. Often the conversion point of B2B marketing is sharing your contact details, right? So there's probably a million, maybe not a million, there's probably a few websites that you've gone to and you've had to provide your contact details, right? And there's a value exchange there. You're giving your contact details, because you want to get this PDF that might be like an infographic or invite you to a webinar or something, something along those lines. You might get something back that does not meet your expectations, isn't a strong value exchange. That organization might have gotten your contact details, but you have a poor experience, right? So like that's going to have a really lasting impact.
We've got a mentor who works with our business, and we recently launched a new newsletter, and he signed up for it.
Yeah.
And he then wrote a message straight off the back of it. And he's like, I've signed up to the newsletter. The outreach message was good.
Yeah.
The landing page was good.
Yeah.
The form bit was easy. But your welcome message was horrific.
Yeah.
And it's like, after he'd submitted his details, another window pops up and he's like, it's not even on brand. It looked awful. And he's like, just pointing out, because it's another part of the journey, of the customer experience. Yeah. We're just sat on the other side thinking, I've got an email address. Brilliant. Yeah. But it's so important. It's so important that all of those touch points are good. And this is why I think, certainly from our side, we fight for, you really need to invest in making good, as you say, value-driven content. I've actually spoken to quite a few marketers recently who have lent into this idea that the job of a CMO should be repositioned from chief marketing to chief entertainment.
Yeah.
Like you actually, and I appreciate that it depends on what sort of like part of the buyer journey you're on, right?
Of
but
course.
Like certainly the earlier stage, we've got to entertain people, like not.
Maybe less so in B2B. I mean, like that, I don't think you're necessarily having to entertain the whole way through. Like there's capturing attention, there's entertaining, right? Yes. So, but you're right. You need to capture attention, and I mean, often that is by a bit of entertainment,
I mean, I am seeing, I obviously follow a lot of B2B, and I'm continuously looking at their content. It'd be interesting to get your perspective on this, because you have said a few steps back, you mentioned B2C is culture, B2B is commercial. I think that's a really good point. And it's a very, very, it's such an important one to understand that difference.
Still a value exchange as well, though, right?
Yes. But I'm interested to know what you think about the sort of the type of B2B content out there at the moment, because there's a lot of content that's sort of like the royal we the business do X, we do Y, we value this. And I'm seeing a trend of B2B firms who are moving more to sort of like tapping into the individuals within the business, people, personas, like humans, and doing a little bit more of like I or you. A you is better than I.
Yeah.
What's your your feel on that though, in terms of the communication? Because B2B, traditionally it's all about, well, we do X and it's going to be save you X amount of time and make you some money. But equally, like, still a human buying it at the end though, right? So
I mean, people in B2B jobs are humans too. So yeah, I mean, communication should be if you communicate in the way a human communicates, your storytelling, right?
Yeah.
So you get really big organizations like LinkedIn, for example. They've done a lot with really changing their B2B communication strategy. They have a campaign recently, it's like B2 Believe, but it's kind of a bit more consumer in its vibe, identifying that B2B marketing decision makers or B2B decision makers are also humans. So if you can figure out a way to communicate in a less transactional way, I think that is definitely an area that people are seeing results in.
And I get to be fair, I think you've said right off the bat that you are very customer focused anyway. So if you are really focusing on what the customer wants, part of that is, I'm guessing, also understanding how they want to consume content, how they make the decisions, and that sort of thing. And so I guess that can also help you with that messaging.
I mean, the B2B decision-making process can be much longer than consumer for a start. It really depends on what type of B2B product and in what type of industry. Sometimes it can be as long as a year For SaaS, it can be a lot shorter than that. But yeah, a really deep understanding of a decision maker's motivations, of their needs, is only going to help your capability of telling good stories and making that connection.
AI is transforming a lot of marketing right now. What excites you about AI and what terrifies you?
So the big AI conversation, I think from a marketing perspective, a lot of people are just like, what am I doing with AI? From my perspective, like AI, it, on one hand, I think it's pretty amazing. I mean, there's very little I do in my day job today that doesn't in some shape or form utilize AI, whether it's helping look at some data and make that data a little bit more understandable, personalization at scale, amazing. Even like whizzing up a bit of a plan, or trying to prep for something, doing a little bit of market research. AI is just making all of those things so easy.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you are clever, you'll be thinking of how can I incorporate AI into every single thing my marketing team are doing, because all you're really doing is making them AI forward, making them think and speak the language of data and AI. It's just going to help them get to where they need faster. Obviously, as long as they're doing it in an appropriate way and not sharing all of your information on ChatGPT or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I think there are two things. So AI as an assistant to marketeers is super strong, really helpful. It's going to hopefully free up time for marketers to tell better stories. On the flip side of that, there's fear. There's a lot of fear within the marketing community over AI. They're worried about their job security. It's encroaching in a lot of different areas. First, it was around data and efficiency, and was really just in the realms of things like programmatic. But now, as it moves much more into the creative areas, teams are getting worried. It's on one side excited about having more opportunity to do more and to do more faster in a more efficient way because of AI. And then on the flip side, slightly worried about are we going to have roles in 5 years' time? Will it have progressed to that point? Time will tell.
I want to dive a little bit more just into sort of back from marketing and a bit more into sort of your own personal journey.
Sure.
And this is the What the Fuck Happened podcast. So we're more interested in the fuck ups and the failures than we are the success. So with that in mind, what has been your biggest career failure to date? And what have you learned or taken away from it?
As we talked a little bit about earlier, I've worked for a lot of organizations. I've experienced really rapid growth, both in terms of product and in terms of country growth, launched a lot of markets in fast scaling organizations like Google, like Meta, like Amazon. I don't think any of my biggest fuck ups are related to the day-to-day of marketing. I've won awards, I've created great campaigns. Nothing has really gone massively wrong from say a campaign perspective. I'd say my biggest fuck ups have been maybe staying in some organizations for longer than I should have. One example was a really big tech company that I worked for that will remain nameless. And it's as soon as I landed there, I recognized that the culture wasn't really right. People were a bit burned out. There was very little opportunity for personal development. They weren't investing in the marketing infrastructure. They weren't investing in their team, and consequently, people were just frazzled. I was leading a team who, to be honest, were pretty frazzled, and I was pretty frazzled within this organization as well. But I stayed, and I feel like I stayed for too long on the hope that I could resolve these things and the hope that I could fix these things. Mm-hmm. But the reality was, it pretty toxic atmosphere, and it was a pretty toxic leadership.
Yeah.
And I think this always comes back to really find an organization that you can get the most out of. And this specific organization, there was, and this might sound crazy, but it is totally true. I had a manager who didn't communicate with me for over 2 months. And I was kind of like left to my own devices to do a lot of international marketing with really quite a significant budget. And I knew then that this is not sustainable. I need a better infrastructure here, not just for myself, but just so that I could lead my team in a better way.
Yeah. So I guess hindsight would be, the lesson was you should have trusted your gut. There was a wrong decision to start with and move faster because you've essentially lost time, right? You've lost your own time. But I guess there was a part of you that wanted to stay because you wanted to make an improvement at least. You wanted to try and change something.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to stay. I definitely wanted to improve things. I definitely stuck around for too long. My biggest learning from that is if you give things a shot, but really try and, if you're unhappy in an organization, really think about like, what is making me unhappy? Is it, am I just in the wrong role? Is it a leadership area? Do I have the right skills or is it something else? There's nothing worse than a toxic manager or a toxic workforce. So a big recommendation for any marketeers is when you're in that environment, it's best to get out of it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's great advice. I had, way back in my career, I had 2 or 3 years, I think I was working in recruitment.
Yeah.
And
I imagine that was pretty full on.
Well, toxic culture, all of these things, these words crop up. But I mean, that was me in my role. But actually, my job was speaking to people moving every day. I spoke to, I don't know, I must have spoken to 100 plus 150 people a week.
Yeah.
Moving jobs, and it's so for me, I was very exposed to like why people move around businesses and all of these sorts of things. I think I was, maybe that's kind of, never really thought about it, but it probably put me in good stead, I think, in terms of making my own decision, because I'd seen, to me, it was so normal for people to be like, why are you moving? I want more money. Why are you moving? I hate my boss. Why are you moving? I don't want to commute. Why am I moving? It's horrible. I'm not learning. There's no opportunity for me to grow. So I think just being exposed to that. But to the everyday average person, I don't think you get that kind of exposure. And so you kind of sit on it. You worry so much about, but what happens if they find out I'm looking for another job, and then they're like, I don't get another job? What happens if I go to this new job but it's not as good, or it doesn't work out? Like, there's a lot of fear because it is a big change. But as I think we've already dived into that at the beginning, you've got those 3 questions I think are super important, because they'll have such an impact on you as a person that they're not worth putting up.
And I think that's the crux of it. Really think about, is this worth my time? Is this worth my effort? Is this worth the 40, 50, 60 hours you might be putting in a week? Look at tech marketing, where there's just a huge amount of uncertainty in job roles there. Specifically in tech, people tend to move around a little bit more anyway, right? But the stats are 7 out of 10 people are thinking about quitting their roles at any given time. 9 out of 10 people are not engaged by their organization. I mean, these are...
That is 9 in 10 people in tech marketing are unengaged.
Are not engaged. Not even in tech marketing. That's just in general. 9 out of 10 people are not engaged in their roles.
Most people I speak to aren't interested or engaged with the job.
Yeah, that's the reality that we're in. That's why I'm in an organization like Zensai. I mean, that's what we're trying to solve for. If you create a better environment for your workforce, they're going to stay for longer. They're going to be happier. A happier workforce means you don't have the retention issues.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was just about to say that's the opportunity, right? Build something in that space, which is exactly what Zensai is.
Yeah.
I mean, 9 in 10 is pretty much rock bottom.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's 7 out of 10 people are actively thinking about quitting their job. And that, like, it's broken. It's a broken system, and I think in marketing and tech, it's probably even a little bit more broken than that. But there are fixes out there, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of organizations who really want to create the right environments. They want to invest in learning. They want to have the right performance culture. They want an organization that is super engaged and they know what's happening. And we have the tools today to really help us do
It's
that.
really about getting to that place as quickly as possible, really.
I think there's a responsibility on organizations to be thinking in that way. I mean, another stat is 70% of the cost of an organization is often the human cost. So the cost of
hiring
their
and firing, replacing, training,
the cost of their employees. So when you think about that as an asset or that as a resource, wouldn't you prefer to work in an organization where they're really investing in you? You're learning, you're growing, and the organization is doing the same. So I think
I could do a little plug for recruiters here, right? Because recruiters are always getting completely slated for like being this like job that no one wants to pay them, no one wants them. But if you think about culture, a business selling to a candidate direct and because they want the candidate is not going to be an accurate, true reflection of what that cultural match might be. An honest recruiter, or call them something else, just a third party who's privy to both sides, is a far better indicator of whether that's going to be a good match in the long term.
It'd be good if there was some kind of like culture check where you're like, does this company really have a good culture?
But the problem is that there's HR teams. I don't think they want the candidate, so they just say, we're right for you. I mean, it's weird. It's a very difficult thing to assess whether you're the right culture fit before you've spent any time with each other.
Yeah, but I think
there are some basic questions.
There's some basic questions you can ask, and like we're in marketing, right? We're good at planning, so you can put a bit of your planning efforts into your career. Challenge your own personal brief about your career. What is it you want to get out of your career? Is the organization the right fit? Does it have the right culture? Are the people that I want to be spending my time with, are they going to invest in me? Do I want to invest in them? I think just generally being more curious is going to be a good way to go.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate a lot of this advice. It's really good. I've got a few very short, sort of quick fire questions, sort of finish things up here. So if you don't mind. So number one, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice I've ever received is don't be afraid to challenge things. So whether that's challenging a brief, whether it's challenging another person. I think earlier on in my career, I was a bit quieter. I challenged a lot less. I preferred to be a bit more in the background. And there were probably a lot of questions that I could have asked that would have helped me get to where I wanted to get to much faster. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. Don't be afraid to challenge. It's going to give you more information and help you make better decisions.
Yeah, I think that resonates with me. I think it's a really great point. I remember some of my early jobs and just being so like, I don't know, fear. It's kind of like the same advice you'd give to a kid going to school, right? You can never ask a stupid question. Like, just put your hand up and ask, but don't sit there in silence.
Sometimes you're in the beginning, you're like, oh no, I can't ask a question.
I think you can get that, and certainly in the beginning in new jobs as well. You're kind of afraid of
no such thing as a stupid question.
Yeah, but then there are
just
some
a stupid answer.
Yeah, that's true. If you could go back to your biggest what the fuck moment, which we've talked about and uncovered. What would you say to yourself in that moment now?
So I would say what you're experiencing right now is a total shit show and a massive mess. But this is going to make you more resilient. You're going to come through this with a stronger set of tools than you had when you went into it. You're going to be able to use this experience and be stronger in other areas.
Like it and agree. Final one. Finish this sentence. Success is
finding what makes you happy.
There's one final thing. It wasn't written down as a question,
Sure.
so you won't
Okay.
know about it.
Curveball.
Bit of a curveball, yeah. Within the Dojo Films logo subset, we have
Yes.
a squiggle
Mm-hmm.
from the D to the end
Yep.
of the O. It gets sort
I
of
get you.
stretched out. That squiggle to us represents a number of things, but really it's the journey. There's no straight line. And the whole purpose of this podcast is to really showcase to people that success is not just this kind of like line, you know.
Yeah.
You don't just start here and follow
No.
these steps and get there. And so what we've asked all of the guests to do is to kind of like just draw out your sort of career journey like this, with the highs and the lows essentially representing the peaks and the troughs, the
Sure.
successes and the failures.
Yeah. Starting point over 20 years ago, FT was like first major role out of university. It was awesome. So it was a great peak. Gave me a really good introduction to like marketing, to advertising, to basically to people and work. Scientist, it was kind of a steady progression. Google was an awesome organization to work for. So many exciting products. I really felt like in Google, I was at that age where I really found my tribe, learned how to be a marketer, learned a lot about international markets, rolling products out to different areas. And I also found a similar vibe in Meta. Instagram became way more popular than I was expecting it to really fast. So that was just an amazing journey. From Instagram to WeWork. I'd say that my time in WeWork was phenomenal. There were definitely quite significant drops, but in terms of team managers, like there's a lot of folk that I'm still in contact with.
It's a bit like a Richter scale
today.
thing. You went
So
in
it was
at
kind
one
of
end,
like,
came
you
out
know,
the
like a heart monitor. It was it was up
came
and
out
down.
at the same
Yeah.
level.
Yeah, I'd say came out on like a balanced area. Amazon was also like a bounce up and down environment. I think there are obviously some phenomenal stuff that they do, but there were definitely a few areas that I think they could have done a better job in. And then more recently, Zensai, it's right back up there again. So I feel like I'm up there with Zensai. I'm getting the culture that I need. I'm getting the opportunity to succeed that I need, in terms of I know I'm working for an awesome product that I can fully commit myself to, and I know that I'm working with an awesome leadership team because I'm working with an old manager who brought me over there. So I feel like it's been in the earlier part, it was like peaks, a couple of troughs, but any marketeer is going to have a few troughs in a career that's over 20 years, you know. But yeah, I'd say it can take you a while to get into your rhythm. It can take you a while to find the type of culture that you're looking for, to find the type of people that you want to work with. And I think once you can kind of whittle that down, you become a stronger person, a stronger marketeer, and I think that's where I'm at the minute.
Donal, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
It's been awesome to have you on
Same.
the What the Fuck Happened podcast.
Happy to be here. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the What the Fuck Happened podcast.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to listen to more, subscribe to our channel. We look forward to seeing you at the next one. What the fuck happened there?